morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Kids Plus Live, coming to you live from Evidence Based Studios at Kids Plus Pediatrics, right here in the fabulous city. Thank you, Vanna White, in the fabulous city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And as you know, that is not Vanna White sitting in the other side of the studio, but next to me on screen. You all know who he is, but I'll let him introduce himself anyway.
Dr. Todd Willin. Willin. I'm giving you special sound effects today.
I like it. You've got a PA system. I'm a little jealous, but I'm just going to stick with the standard microphone. And you know what, Todd? Let's do that again because I want to make sure those of you who have watched this show before, we got some new streaming software. We've had some echo issues with Todd's microphone. So, Todd, give it to me again.
It is Dr. Todd Willin. Todd Willin right here in Evidence Based Studios, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. How is my sound today?
Oh, I just tested it and you sound fabulous. The dulcet tones that are not cracking, that are not breaking up, that are not echoing. You sound fabulous this morning.
Thank
Todd.
you, Chrome. Thank you, Chrome.
Exactly. Thank you, Google Chrome. Thank you, Google overlords. Apparently it works much better.
You haven't said thank you to Google for many things, Chad. So it's a big step that we're able to thank Google for anything.
That is true. Very, very true. Usually when we thank them, it's just because the Guardian has shamed them into doing something, but that's a whole other story.
Whole other story. Whole other story.
Anyway, as always, everybody, your questions, your comments will be driving the show. Todd and I are happy to just, kind of keep talking and riffing, and maybe we'll tell that Google story one day. I don't know. But you got a question? You want us to talk about something? Just drop it into the comments and we will address it. We do have yes, Dr. Willin, you have a question.
I'm ready when I got something. I'm chomping at the bit. I got something.
Hit me.
All right. You see that guy? I'm hoping I'm pointing in the right direction. I'm checking. That guy. Let's see.
Direction.
No, wrong direction. Yeah, here it's flipped back around. This guy over here. This guy and Kids Plus, related to the story he's telling you that gets us with Google, started back in 2017. But the reason I'm telling you that right now, and we can go to the story some other day or even today, but Chad, I can't hold it back any further. There is going to be a movie premiere, a documentary movie premiere where, we don't want to boast, but we did perform our own stunts. That is going to be having its official premiere in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at the Carnegie Science Center. Tickets are free. It is already up on Eventbrite or some similar type of software. It is October 26th. That's a Wednesday night, Chad. It is going to start at 6 p.m. hors d'oeuvres, free tickets. It'll go from 6 to 7. If I'm not mistaken, 7 to 8:30 is the premiere screening at the Carnegie Science Center. Hour and a half long documentary with yours truly, and that is yours in the plural, meaning Chad and I are in this documentary because we're kind of badass when it comes to doing some of this stuff and fighting disinformation. And Kids Plus is thrilled to be on the forefront of that. And so Chad and I love to be representatives of Kids Plus. When we do this work, we've spoken nationally, internationally. We've been on 2 other documentaries. This is a full-fledged documentary that will be dedicated to vaccine disinformation. It is called Virulent, the Vaccine War. The filmmaker, the documentary maker is Laura Davis, along with her husband, Jardis, out of LA. And we're just thrilled to be part of it. So I wanted to let you guys know, October 26th, Carnegie Science Center. Tickets are free, but you do have to go ahead and get them in advance. Chad, I heard they got 100 tickets out the first day the notice went up. So we are going to be sending our own version for our own Kids Plus team, whoever wants to come to that, as well as our Kids Plus families. So the word is going out over this week to next week to get you guys to be aware of the date and save it if you can. But I'll be there, Chad. I don't know if you said you're going to be able to make that.
Yes, I'm going to be there. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yes, I already have my tickets. And speaking of tickets, I have dropped the link, the Eventbrite link, in the comments. Again, the tickets are free. Carnegie Science Center, 6 p.m. on October 26th and this isn't just the Pittsburgh premiere. This is the world premiere of this documentary.
Now, Chad, you may not know this. There are too many pre-screenings that aren't the premieres. This is clearly the national premiere.
Right.
I think it was the vaccine law meeting. It was in DC, had a mini preview. And just last night, I believe it's going to be screened at the National American Academy of Pediatrics meeting, have another screening there. So
That's exciting.
That's the rumor that we're hearing. Yeah.
If you go to that link, on that page, there is the trailer. It's about a 3-minute preview for the film, which is extremely compelling. It gives you a really good sense of what they're going to cover in the documentary, the kinds of guests and people who are featured in the documentary. And you will notice a particularly familiar face is the first face you'll see when that trailer begins. It's pretty cool. So, and as Todd said, I do appear in them. I got to say, Todd, I'm feeling a little bummed out because in the initial sizzle reel trailer, I appeared prominently, and now in the official trailer, I'm nowhere to be found. But I am in the movie.
I'm on this last trailer. The last time I checked, I have to check because they remade the sizzle reel a few times. So
yeah, no, well, the new one is at that link, and you are the first face that we see, and Paul Offit and some particularly frightening anti-vax people show up near the end. So
Chad has some serious money lines in this documentary. He's done it before on multiple interviews, but I will say he brings home the yeah.
And obviously we have fun, and it's fun to be in in national, international documentaries. And I'll drop some links to another one too. Hey, good morning, Linda from Heath, Ohio. Happy Fired Up Friday. Happy Fired Up Friday to you too. But we joke about it, and it's fun, and it's neat to have our 15 seconds, probably more than minutes, but our 15 seconds of fame. But it's serious stuff. As you know, we've been covering this in depth, in detail with the COVID vaccine. But as Todd said, vaccine work goes back decades, but our work against the anti-vaccine movement, our really passionate vaccine advocacy goes back now over 5 years. And it's a scary place to be when you see the people, the things that they think, the things that they say, and the real impact that they can have on public health. And obviously we're seeing that in a very real and frightening way the last year and a half.
Okay, if I shift it up into fired up fifth gear, because
yes, do it.
What I'm going to say is that exactly what Chad just said. For 5 years, starting in 2017, when Chad single-handedly took on literally over 800 attacking accounts who posted over 10,000 times to our Facebook page, continuously, globally, round the clock for at least 6 straight days and many days beyond that. And what came from that was work that resulted in us doing exactly what the anti-vaccine industry, we now call it the anti-vaccine industry, does, is they try to squash you and quiet you and strike fear. And to be honest, I'm going to give complete kudos to Chad, who not only is my teacher and sensei and said, oh, hell no. Oh, hell no, because science is on our side, and this is how they try and squash and put darkness around it. And you shine light, he said. And then that's where he said, no, we're fighting back. We're keeping the post up. We are then he pretty much, again, single-handedly, he created the toolkit on how to fight the anti-vaccine industry. And I want to just let everybody know, we as a group then started ringing the alarm bells and saying, hey, this is serious. These guys are, at that point, definitely getting better organized. They weren't particularly well funded yet, but they are eroding trust. And we now know that there are serious bad actors, including global foreign hostile countries, that actually help churn that distrust because they try and weaken countries where there's free speech. We were ringing that bell 3 years, or at least 2+ before the pandemic hits in full. And what did the pandemic do, right? The one thing Chad and I were saying is, if anything, there's a silver lining here that's a terrible silver lining that's costing millions of lives globally. But at least the world gets to see, everybody said vaccines are a victim of their own success, right? They're so good. People don't see polio. They don't see these diseases. So while we saw this disease erupting and then, saw what was coming, the one thing we said amongst ourselves is, this is terrible, but at least the silver lining is this is an actual real world, real time demonstration of what a world without herd immunity looks like. And you can see how it's tearing through communities and how it was literally causing millions to perish. And what happened was that highly organized, now well-funded, and now politicized anti-science, anti-vaccine industry and their allies took the pandemic and co-opted it and used it for an opportunity to spread more distrust and more fear and infuse QAnon and crazy stuff. And here we are now, a couple years well into the pandemic now, and seeing the devastation and the further erosion of trust. And that's why Kids Plus is here. And that's why Chad and I are thrilled to be here again, to always try and provide evidence-based information, which is why we're in evidence-based studios, to help you guys see through the bull crap.
Just made you small. Sorry about that. Yeah, and I dropped a link in the comments from another documentary in which we were featured, and this one came out right before the
documentaries. Chad, you're just
exactly. I could drop a third link too, but I'll stick with two. This one's from The Economist, and both Todd and I are featured in this one as well. It feels so recent, but it's also so old. It actually came out right before we were filmed that right before the COVID vaccine came out. Yeah, it's wild. And what I just want to jump on what Todd said very briefly too. I was just talking about this 2 days ago right here in the office. I think we've mentioned this before, but we're a teaching practice. And so we host med students, we host PA students who are doing pediatric rotations. And we have a particularly really nice relationship with Slippery Rock University, which has a great physician assistant program. And we host all of their pediatric rotations. We get 3, 4, 5 PA students at a time every couple of weeks, and we kind of host them and we teach them. And if you come into the office with your kids, you may in fact see them at some point in the exam room. It says the live video has ended.
What?
Yeah, it just shows the live video having ended on Facebook.
No, I'm still.
Still getting it?
Yeah.
And now I'm getting it back too. Sorry about that, folks, but I just had some weird Facebook glitch on my second monitor that said the show had ended.
At least on here, I'm looking at it.
Yeah, we're good. I'm back live. Anyway, back to where I was. The PA students, and we have them, I always do a little presentation.
Thank you, Annie Banani.
And thanks, Annie.
Good morning, Jennifer.
Yeah, and hi to Annie. Yeah, Jennifer put the flame emoji up when you started getting fired up. So nice to know you guys are all watching. Thank you. So one of the things that we talk about with the PA students is that I always ask them, Todd, why'd you get into the program? And what made you want to be in healthcare? And there are varying answers, but there are pretty common themes. One is often that they had family members, moms, dads, other people who were in healthcare, and they were kind of immersed in that and wanted to do it too. There's often that they or someone in their family had some serious illness or injury that made them get interested in healthcare. And I always joke at the end of the presentation that I give to them that none of them ever say that they got into healthcare because they wanted to post on social media. And of course, the lesson is that in 2022, if you're going to get into healthcare, you really have to pay attention to and post on social media and be out there, because you need to fight the presence of mis and disinformation that is online. And I was just talking about this very thing with them on Wednesday, that we need to be raising our voices because public health is literally at stake. And that's why we're here. That's why we're getting fired up, Annie, or at least a little bit. She wants us to fire it up, Todd.
You know what, Annie and Jennifer and Linda and whoever else is out there watching, I'm going to try a little experiment. In the bottom right of your Facebook app, there is a heart and a thumbs up emoji. And I got to tell you, we're a little pissed at Facebook, being that we have tens of thousands of followers, and yet this feed gets out to a very few people. And thank God for you guys for being loyal followers. But we are going to be changing it up down the road, and Chad will announce that next month. But I want to try an experiment, Chad. I'm going to hit my emojis. I want you to hit your emojis. I just want to give it a shot and see if this makes it go out. You can hit the heart emoji. You can hit the thumbs up emoji. You can hit both, which I'm doing. And I just want to ask you all to do this for the next 30 seconds. And I'm going to count it down. 1 or 30, 29, 28.
They're flying, man. People out there are doing it. Thank you.
25, 24.
What we're doing is we are sticking it to the man. We are taking down the algorithm. That's what we're doing.
18, 17, 16. Keep tapping. 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for that little experiment. We'll see if that juices up the algorithm a little. But yeah, I want to, as always, as Chad says, thank you guys. You guys are loyal. You guys are participate. You help fire us up. You help us stay on target. And yeah, we know a lot of people. I love those emojis. Thank you for that, Candace.
Hey, Candace is watching on YouTube. That's exciting. Thank you, Candace.
Wow, YouTube. Nice.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but we are fired up. We are fired up on Fridays, and we are fired up most weeks to really help you get good info. And again, we're happy to answer any question you have. We like to have fun. We'll talk a little bit about our upcoming Halloween show that'll be coming up. But while we're on the fired up side, if I may, Chad, I saw something circulating on some of the social media platforms yesterday that just had me fired up again. There's something that's called social emotional wellness. It's something that's been a cornerstone for child development and early child specialist, pediatric developmentalist, pediatric early child care kind of specialist, right? Social emotional wellness. It's basically about working with kids to help them be able to manage big feelings, to help work on the development of executive functions like staying on task while dealing with frustration, right? It's the kind of stuff that sets us up for long-term success. And it's oftentimes patterned and practiced with play, which is why we say play is the work of childhood, right? But Chad, if you haven't been watching on social media craziness, apparently, if you didn't know it, social emotional learning, which is sometimes called SEL, if you want to abbreviate it, is now being equated with CRT, critical race theory, which is also then being equated with some huge liberal conspiracy to somehow brainwash people. But literally, I'm just looking at social emotional wellness in this discussion. And I'm watching how the just absolute insanity of the anti-science, fear-based mongering, politicized messaging has grabbed this and is now pushing that into the feeds that you would think you would see it. So that now people are being shown at school districts and preschools around the country now demanding that social emotional learning be taken out. Meanwhile, it is like the cornerstone. It's like the vaccination of primary care pediatrics. It's the stuff Diana Schwab works with all the time. And if you've seen Diana Schwab on our show, you know that is like the core. That's Cara Simonello on our podcast. Social emotional learning is stuff that helps kids succeed in adulthood, even when they have lousy environments that they're brought up in, or sadly adverse environments they're brought up in. This is the stuff that child care providers and educators are taught to help kids hone in. And now, Chad, apparently this is a hoax and a conspiracy to somehow take over the nation. Sorry, got me fired up.
No. See, it's a fired up Friday. I love it. We haven't been fired up for a while. This is a good thing. Yeah. See, this is the thing that drives me crazy. And let's be clear. There are things out there. There are movements. There are ideas. There are theories. There are, and I hesitate to use the word, but what the heck, pedagogical principles that don't belong in schools, that are crackpot BS. Just as there are crackpot BS scientific or it's quasi-scientific, pseudoscientific theories. But this is where we are, Todd. This is where we are on September 30th at 10:22:55 a.m. in the year of our Lord 2022, where everything, and I mean everything, and everything should be certainly critically viewed. I'm a huge fan of critical thinking and making sure that we know damn well what we're doing and what we're talking about and what we're communicating. But this is where we are now, where everything, including stuff that has been tried and true and that has been working and helping people, whether it's vaccines, whether it's medicine, whether it's educational learning theories and practices, everything is now suspect.
Yeah.
Everything is under the gun. Everything must be, and I'm not sure what it's supposed to be replaced with,
Oh,
right?
I don't think it's supposed to be replaced with anything. I know that was rhetorical, but
Yeah.
I'm saying it. It's just pissing me off.
Yeah, if
Well, I
you've
take
tuned
that
in
back.
late and you think
It's
you're
supposed to be
watching,
replaced with fear and distrust.
well,
And
yeah,
thus that
yeah.
you listen to that voice that's telling you what you should and shouldn't believe.
I hate to it's like you've tuned into the Muppet Show and you're just looking at the balcony right now. It's like two guys just being crotchety and curmudgeonly, and what are their names? Waldorf and Stadler. Is that what they are? I was
That's who they were.
never
Yes.
a huge Muppet Show guy, but I always liked
Bum,
the
bum,
angry
bum,
guys
bum.
up at the balcony. Um,
Bum.
but that's the way it feels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what drives me nuts is right that this is, as Chad and I referenced back to what we were dealing with in 2017, it is using communication as a weapon. It is the weaponization of communication on now the most powerful platforms that the humankind has ever known. We are coming to you through your computer, or more likely through this. Anywhere you are, wherever you are, you have this. And right. And everybody knows, retailers know, right? Governments know, and bad actors know they can change behavior by reaching you through this. And they're really sophisticated. There's tons of high level like research that goes into communication and psychology to figure out how to press your buttons. And so the fact that people are outraged that there is an evidence-based theory that helps kids down a path to improve their development, or Chad, that you might want to burn a book because it talks about people that don't look or act like you. Guess what? You don't have to read that book, right? The fact that evolution is real, right? It's like I mean,
Are you sure?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
All we ask you to do out there is to go to authoritative resources you trust. And also we'd ask, work your own critical thinking around it. And if you're not sure where to get a resource, then go to those trusted authoritative resources and see what they're saying, but then still do your own reading and see what it looks like. Because what happens is, and I will say this, is the fear-based mongering pushes you into a channel that's pretty narrow. And then everything in that channel is saying the exact same thing. I will tell you, Chad, as he always likes to say, is all about his radical middle. The dude is reading stuff over here, and then again over here, and then again over there, and then here, and then he lets it stew, and he lets it percolate. And then he'll tell you just what he thinks. And sometimes he and I will get at it because I'm like, I don't know that. And that's okay. That's
True story.
yeah. That's okay though, right? I mean, he says, no, go check that or read this or do that. And, and sometimes he'll say, okay, I didn't know about that source, and we'll go with. That's called critical thinking. You're challenging each other. You're asking each other. That's, by the way, what universities used to have, right, Chad? Isn't that kind of the whole idea was you hear things that you might not like, but you learn from it? I mean, you did university stuff for a while.
Dude, now he's trying to get me really fired up.
The bear.
Yes. Universities used to be about critical thinking and seeing all sides and taking all viewpoints, and now it's all about dogma, dogma, dogma. Do not get me started. Although I will throw out one of my favorite quotations. It's from the poet John Chardy, who was also a professor. A university is what a college becomes when it loses interest in its students. Just let that sit for a while. But no, what I really want to go back, because I was already fired up, and I don't want to.
He's getting fired up. I can see.
I don't want to turn this into a dissertation on everything that's wrong with higher education in 2022. But let's go back to what you were saying about getting inside that bubble. And here's something I'm honestly not sure if we've talked about this at length on this show, and I think it's worth talking about. It's something actually, again, I was talking to the Slippery Rock students about on Friday. Um, and before I do that, I liked Annie's comment.
Yeah.
Idiots have time to be louder before critical thinkers. They just go off their simple minded thoughts. Yeah. What Todd and I have, that's a great point, Annie. Todd and I have done
It is great.
presentations over and over and over again. We've done grand rounds at a bunch of different hospitals and pediatric programs. Um, and Todd created this great slide for one of the presentations that was basically two columns, right? It's science and anti-science, and what is possible and what is required of each column. And it's incredible because in the science side is all sorts of academic rigor and research and peer review and it just goes on and on and on.
Hypothesis.
It's yes, you're testing hypotheses and experimentation. And there are all these limitations with good reason. The limitations, of course, are evidence in the scientific process and the review of the scientific process. On the other side, on the idiot side, on the anti-science side, the only limitations are your imagination and how fast your opposable thumbs or all of your hands on a keyboard can type and spew this crap online. You are limited in no other way. You are not accountable to anything you have said, any even moments before, right? Anything goes. It's just whatever sticks.
Yeah.
And there's a real, and it's no wonder why it's much easier to communicate like that than it is to communicate in evidence-based science and medicine. Breath. Now back to what I was actually going to get fired up about before Annie got me even other fired up. So you're in your bubbles. And Todd and I were talking earlier, and thank you again, everybody who was hitting those emojis and tapping things and trying to help us conquer the algorithm. And I think it worked because we've basically got more viewers now than we had back then. Maybe there's more exposure for this.
While you're
But
talking, Chad, I'm going to be tapping on my icons again while
please
you
do.
talk. We won't count it
But
down, but just give it a try.
as Todd pointed out earlier, right? It's about clicks and it's about making money and things that are fear driven. And that produce a kind of visceral, not necessarily an intellectual, but a visceral, a non intellectual, a fear based or an anger based response. That's what drives clicks, and what that mean. Therefore, that's what drives money for the social media companies. And so, when you get things in your feed, it is often those types of things. It's often the bad news or the scary things rather than the reassuring or the good news. Todd and I were at the HPV roundtable a couple of years ago in Atlanta. And we saw this amazing presentation from a professor, and I forget her name. She's from McGill University in Canada. And she had done an extensive research on the life cycle of good news and bad or frightening news online. And generally, the good news spiked, lasted maybe a day or two, and then vanished from feeds and from shares and information. It was almost like a lightning strike. It happens, it kind of reverberates, and then it goes away. But bad news, scary things, things that weren't true but sounded true or were terrifying or frightening or got people worried, spiked some more, stayed high, and then stayed high not just for a day or two, but for days, weeks, months. Sometimes would dip and then come back. Years later, they were still high. You've heard me use the phrase on this show before, if you're a regular viewer, zombie myths. Myths that simply will not die and that sometimes jump from one vaccine to another, like the infertility one. It was the HPV vaccine. Now it's the COVID vaccine. It's all BS. But those sorts of things keep being privileged in feeds. They never, ever go away because they're scary. People react to them. They keep getting pushed into the feed and they keep getting resurrected, or they just simply become undead. Again, they're zombies and never die. Last point on this. So, you're in those sorts of things. Those are the things you're more likely to see, but it's not just that you are more likely to see in your feed the bad stuff. You are most likely to see in your feed the bad stuff that the AI has realized is most going to scare you based on your gender, based on your age, based on where you live, based on the other things with which you follow and interact on social media. This sounds like some terrible dystopian future science fiction film, but it's not. It's the present. It's here. It's what's happening. So the very simple example with the COVID vaccine, there's good research to back this up. young women of childbearing age were most likely to see popping up in their feed the theories that it was going to cause them to miscarry or the COVID vaccine was going to make them infertile, right? The thing that, again, based on their age and their demographic, was probably most likely to frighten them. Urban minorities were most likely to see things about the Tuskegee incident or about experimentation or about the dangers of potential experimentation in science. Rural white men were much more likely to see things about government control or the Illuminati or the Bill Gates microchip, right? It's micro targeted fear and paranoia. You can live in that in a house next door to someone in a different demographic group, and they might get something different. This is the way the AI works. It's the way these social media companies work, and particularly once you've gotten off of the I see only what I follow, and what I follow is what shows up in my feed in a time sensitive manner. Now that the algorithm kind of rules everything, you are much more likely to see stuff that will scare you specifically, and that is I'm not going to say it's evil, but it's close to it. All right, and end of my rant and
Well,
fired
I'll
up.
quote two people. I'm going to quote myself first, which was that description that Chad just gave you was I tried to summarize that by saying social media delivers people their own little personal slice of hell. They figure out what it is that will scare you and then get it to you. And again, Annie and Tara and Annie again is all about retirement house. Yeah, right. They know they're calling from inside the house, right? It
Yeah.
is just terrible. The other person I'm going to quote is Chad, who also puts this into amazing perspective, which is this is still a super tiny group that pushes this crazy ass conspiracy stuff, but they use megaphones and they use bots and they use trolls and they amplify their message. And he also pulls out a quote. What was the quote about the passion piece here, Chad?
Yeah, they're much more willing to fight for their false claims than we are for the truth.
Yeah,
There's
he
a real
describes it as
asymmetry of passion.
asymmetry. Yeah,
Yeah,
asymmetry of passion.
no, not
Um,
we, not Todd and I, obviously not Kids Plus, but in general in the healthcare industry, people are much less likely to fight for their beliefs than the anti-science people are to fight for their BS.
Well, and if you think about it, it's scary. They call you names. I mean, if you saw what happened during the attack on us, they were calling Chad horrific names and making horrific types of things. And the reason I point that out is they know that scares people when you read this, as he describes it, vitriol on your feed from these anonymous sources. And then it oftentimes leads to what their goal is, to have you pull down that post, to go more quiet, to not talk about the science, because holy crap, all I was trying to do was talk about vaccines and or whatever, evolution, and I got destroyed. I'm not going to do that again. Check. They just won. That's exactly their tactic.
Todd, you were talking a minute ago about bots. Obviously, I was talking about the AI and the algorithms. You and I had a conversation the other day that we should talk about. It fits very nicely here. And again, everybody, if you actually have questions for us, drop them in. Otherwise, we're just going to keep.
We promise we'll talk about them.
But you know what you don't see very much of on social media anymore these days, Todd?
No, what?
Myocarditis.
Ah, yes.
And there was a very clear moment in time when there was a precipitous, dramatic drop off in tweets and posts and things in your feed about myocarditis. Do you remember when that was?
I think it was right around February 24th or somewhere right around there. February 24th, 2022.
Yeah,
somewhere around that date. What's that?
What happened then?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't, I think it was cold around Pittsburgh. Oh, yeah. Hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers invaded Ukraine on that day and that week. Yeah, that was what it was. That was it.
And so what possible connection does that have?
Well, interestingly, Chad, we did say that hostile foreign countries who use disinformation, probably number one tool of Russian kind of disruption of free speech type countries, is their disinformation campaigns, where they have literally paid trolls and bot farms and are actually considered masters internationally of using disinformation while trying to disrupt countries or disrupt media or disrupt coverage, either to tilt things to their favor or to cause disruption and dissension in the opposing countries. What we saw in Ukraine was they were prepared. And I was just reading further on this last night, Chad, that following 2014's invasion of Crimea, and I know we're going into the geopolitical scale here, but that type of attack was launched by Russia against Ukraine and also kind of saturated internationally to just kind of allow that to occur, and the annexation happened. And who knew? We lived in Pittsburgh. Ukraine learned from that and actually created a serious team, as did a lot of democracies, to help counteract disinformation campaigns. So I'll hand it back to you, Chad, as to what happened with myocarditis.
Yeah, and just in case you think that Todd and I have now gone completely off the deep end and are wearing our tinfoil hats and our own conspiracy, there's actual data to back this up.
Yes.
But basically, the graph of tweets and references in social media to myocarditis as a absolutely horrible, potentially deadly side effect to the COVID vaccine, which again, let's qualify here. Yes, myocarditis for a certain age group is a potential side effect. We have seen that happen. Very rare, resulted in no fatalities. But the medical community was on top of that, very clear about that, very transparent about that. But that was one of the big, and again, fears, particularly driven toward parents of kids, teenagers who were in that age group, showing up in their feeds. So when you look at the data and the graph for the mentions of that, way up here, super high numbers. And then that Russian invasion happens. And it's right off a cliff. Yeah. And at the time, some people, and again, we're being very, very cautious and saying, okay, maybe it's just that there's another big story in the news now, and that's what everyone's talking about. It will probably come back. It's just mentions, it's just posts, it's just no, I mean, which is not to say that no one is talking about it online, but that constant drumbeat of that story, of that concern, of that scare, which was all the way up here, drops off the face of the earth and never, ever comes back anywhere close to that level. Because to Todd's point, a very large part of that energy, of that disinformation campaign energy, is now not being driven toward the U.S. and the COVID vaccine and myocarditis, but towards a war and disinformation about that in the front. It's incredible. It just completely drops off a cliff and never ever comes back.
Yeah. The whole point here, again, as Chad is saying, is that this is masterful manipulation using communication as a weapon. Chad and I actively counteracted. Chad did an amazing series, if you remember, when J&J was causing clotting, which led to like 6 deaths, right? Out of the how many billions of doses given now, Chad. And as a result, the government had jumped on it, surveyed it, assessed it, and decided it wasn't worth the risk of, and rightfully so, but of a few deaths per million. And then there were obviously more people that had clots and were treated, but they took that product off the market. Chad actually tried to then show people using graphs and data what the risk of clotting is from contraception, oral contraceptive pills, which is tremendously higher, like tens and hundreds folds higher. But again, that's how they basically reframe an argument by amplifying and scaring and amplifying and scaring. And boy, the audacity of showing some facts and some sense.
I'm going to make one more point about that. As we all know, it's been a while now, but COVID vaccines became widely available in December of 2020. Mm-hmm. If you look at the data of when, and obviously there was some talk and there was some buildup leading up to that too, but if you look at the first major appearance of discussions, of posts, of tweets about the COVID vaccine. It was in May 2020. Now, clinical trials had already begun kind of quasi in secret, because they had no idea what was going to happen with them. So, the vaccines existed, but not in any sort of public way. But by May 2020, there's a huge push of social media chatter about the vaccines that in the public consciousness don't exist yet and are not coming in any way from any sort of leaks within the vaccine companies and the pharmaceutical companies or within the government. Oh, no, 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 no. They're all coming from anti-vaccine accounts, anti-vaccine people, anti-science, kind of that whole industry. And it's an industry. They make money off of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The key anti-vaxxers make a heck of a lot more money than any pediatrician who's out there.
Oh,
In May 2020, when to public knowledge, and even except for the most minor points of private knowledge, there was no knowledge of the vaccine or what it was or what it would do or what those trials were looking like. They were literally warning you, stoking fear about something that didn't exist or that did exist, but about which they knew absolutely nothing. And that, to me, that is the beauty of 21st century and social media. You can whip up granular level detail of fear and paranoia and outrage over something that you know literally zero about. It doesn't matter. You don't even need, and a lot of good anti-science, anti-evidence-based medicine, paranoia and fear mongering does work out of a hint of a piece of truth, right? But you don't need that. You don't need that. Literally 7 months before anybody knew anything about the vaccines and how they worked, they were able to tell you exactly what was wrong with it and what it would do to you and how it would harm you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to your point, shreds of truth, right? They knew at that point that they were using mRNA technology, like that had already been announced. And so it wasn't hard to do a Google search and find articles on mRNA vaccines, and SARS and MERS had them. But Chad, just as you pointed out, just a hint, just a few shreds, a partial sentence gives it some of that. Oh, you can search that. Oh, and that article comes up, and then they put their own spin on the article or their own lie that absolutely has no basis in fact. But that's how you make the best lies, by weaving a piece or a thread of a little bit of something that's factual into it. And then, you can quickly tear away their veneer and their bluster when you look at the actual facts. But the problem is most of us don't. Most of us don't. And we've quoted Renee DiResta on this show before. She is an expert on disinformation and talks about, wrote in the Atlantic an article called Amplaganda, which is like propaganda, but it's amplified propaganda that we, not bots and not trolls, but we do because we don't read it through and through. And if we don't know the source, but it scares us, we still share it and we say, hey, look at this, or wow, can you believe that? And that's us. And that's partially the sophistication behind social media, which is they know how to make you click and how to press down on something that will then juice up their algorithm. And let's be clear, there's protection of the social media platforms from any liability on what's on their platforms. So they don't police their platforms as much as they say, oh, we're trying to do our best, but they make a shit ton of money. They make billions and billions of dollars every time you click and share things, because they get to then sell ad revenue. And I know we are two old crotchety guys, it sounds like.
Well, and I want to say something else too. And let's be clear. We like to think, Todd, that we're above a lot of this, that we're better than a lot of this. And we are for the most part, but you admitted earlier, that sometimes you'll click on something and kind of get worked up. I'll be like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not true. It goes both ways. And I will admit to, and that's what I'm sitting here thinking, there are times when I click on something on Twitter, it's kind of like a quick rage clicker, and I got to know. And then I'm like, oh, damn it. And it's like, oh, I know better. I know better. I shouldn't have done that. But man, you kind of get fired up.
Yeah.
Right? Or you get, oh my, I need to know more about that. And you click, and then you realize at least I can redeem myself by getting to a point where I realize what I've done, that it is BS. But it's hard. You see that stuff. There's a great GIF on social media. It's one of my favorite ones, especially because it comes from one of my favorite movies. It's a little clip from Mad Max Fury Road, and Tom Hardy goes, "That's bait." And it's just he's pointing and it says that's bait. And that's what so much of this stuff is, right? It's not just clickbait, but it's fear bait, it's anger bait, it's excitement bait. And it's tough sometimes to ignore that stuff. I freely admit that.
It is. It is. I thank all of you for listening through our
Yeah.
our rant, but it is a lived experience for everybody every day. It's just it's totally the red or the blue pill. Do you really want to know what's going on? Because when you get into the muck, it's nasty and ugly, and you realize how much we are all being manipulated. That all being said, I know we're getting toward the end of today's show, so I do want to call out a few highlights. One, as Chad likes to say, and we pediatricians like to say, flu before boo. It is time to get your flu vaccine. Yeah, I have my Band-Aid under here still. Yep, I got my flu vaccine, as did Chad yesterday. Our good friend, Andy Nowak. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that, Sarah. One more sec. Our good friend, Dr. Andy Nowak, has made it very clear that flu is now circulating, and oddly, flu B as opposed to flu A at this time of year is already circulating. So we're seeing people in the community. We're seeing kids getting sick. We're seeing adults getting sick. One of our TikTok followers told us that he had flu A. He's a healthcare provider in Eastern U.S. I think he's Tennessee. So it's circulating, right? It's around. It is absolutely the right time to get your flu vaccine. It is absolutely the right time to have your primary series for COVID fully completed and to get your booster. And we now have boosters, including the newest booster, the bivalent booster, available for kids down to age 12. And Chad, you and I talked about the possibility of a booster for kids down to age 5, possibly that bivalent booster that CDC is saying possibly by mid-October. I'll let you call out some of the other stuff I see you throwing links in.
Yeah, no, and again, as soon as we know anything concrete about a bivalent booster for kids at that age group, we will of course let you know here on Facebook, Twitter, on the website. But I think it was 2 weeks ago we were asked that question both here and on TikTok, and then minutes, hours later, the information popped up. So yeah, it looks like that's on its way. And I'll just reiterate what Todd said. Yes, I was pointing to my Band-Aid underneath my shirt. Todd got his yesterday too. Flu vaccines, they're available here at Kids Plus. We've got get you at the Wellfits. We can get you at our flu clinics as well, which are running like the well-oiled machines they always are. You can check that out on our website. I'll drop the link in here too. I also dropped another link for Todd's Quiet Night Sleep class, the legendary Quiet Night Sleep class that has saved the sleep and the sanity of thousands of kids by now, and his teachings alone, tens of thousands of kids and families. Quiet Night Sleep class, Wednesday, October 12th. It's online. Treat it like pay-per-view. Just bring it over to your house, and everybody can watch the same Zoom feed. You can check that out. It is in the comments. Kelly says, just got my booster and flu shot and I feel amazing. No side effects. That is awesome, Kelly.
And if we could just address, Chad, with a little bit of the time I'll take, is COVID vaccinations. We have a lot more information, right? As Chad said, we have all of 2021 where we had vaccines, the very end of 2020, and we're now halfway through 2022. So and then obviously we had studies going on before that. So we're well over a year and a half. And in the US, I know hundreds and hundreds of millions of doses, Chad. I haven't even looked at the numbers lately. I know collectively we're billions of doses of these vaccines in the globe. And what do we know? That again, the mRNA vaccines, and we've heard this from our friends that we did interviews on our podcast as well as on our live shows.
12.7 billion doses worldwide.
Wow.
12.7 billion worldwide.
And again, really interesting when you look at illness rates and death rates, they are predominantly around the unvaccinated or those that are vaccinated, but we know have poor immune systems based on age or underlying conditions. So vaccines have again and again, and now this far in with, as Chad has described, the most scrutinized, most researched, most surveyed vaccine rollout has shown to be an absolute tremendous success. And again, I hate to keep quoting Andy Nowak, but he said, had we thought this would have been half as good, I mean, a quarter of as good as it turned out to be, we would have been doing backflips. The vaccines are great. And what I will tell you is that infection and the protection it may or may not provide is not anything close to what is provided by a vaccine. And we also know now that infections and serial infections, meaning repeated infections, are just being studied as to what that might be doing to people. This virus, unlike many other viruses we've seen, has the ability to cause inflammation in almost any tissue in the body, as well as cause manipulation of your immune system to either make it ramp up to possibly attack cells of our own. So we're seeing diseases like diabetes would be an autoimmunity that's going up. We see in cases, particularly in some kids. And the other piece is downregulating your immune system, so you're more vulnerable to certain infections. So it is unequivocal at this point in 2022 that you would not be not only fully vaccinated on your primary series for COVID, but getting your boosters as recommended. And please get your flu boosters as well.
Let's switch back real quickly to flu vaccines. I promised you I'd drop that link in the comments. I did. We've already had one at each office. We've got another flu clinic coming up at each office. Tickets are still available because we can do a tremendous number of kids and families and adults. Don't forget adults, as long as you don't have an HMO. There are a couple of other insurance plans that we can't bill that won't allow us to bill for adults, but many of them will. If you give us a call, we can let you know. But we can do whole families. We can do kids.
Chad, I was working Pleasant Hills flu clinic last week, and families literally said they kept, and you've heard this before, they kept equating it to like the Chick-fil-A drive-through. They said it was like harder to park than to get the vaccine and walk in and out of the office as a family.
And Courtney just chimed in. We went last weekend for the flu shot, very fast and very organized. Thank you. That's awesome, Courtney. Thank you for sharing that experience. And again, we have to give huge kudos to our office managers, right, at all three locations, to Tara, to Dawn, and to Jessa and Siobhan at Pleasant Hills. They and
Joyce
also
and the whole team, Carrie in the front office
team, and Joyce Winkler, our amazing director of clinical services. They have come up with a tremendous workflow in and around and out. We've toyed actually with billing them as like 5-minute flu clinics. And in most cases, we can meet that. A lot of cases, we can get you in and out faster than that. Back to Todd's point, some people take longer to park and get in the doors than they do to get around, get their flu shots, and get out. We are very well organized.
And Kelly, the same thing. Kelly said they're scheduled for the next Pleasant Hills one coming up.
And that would be Saturday, October 15th. Cranberry, Seven Fields, you've got one Saturday, October 8th. And Square Hill Greenfield, your next one is Sunday, October 23rd. And don't worry, those will almost certainly not be the last ones. And you can get them at well visits as well, because unlike the COVID vaccines, we can pop these off anytime we want without worrying about losing or wasting doses. And speaking of those COVID vaccines, as Todd was earlier, we continue to have booster clinics either Tuesday or Wednesday every week at every office. And not just booster clinics also, but obviously primary doses too. If your children have not gotten those yet or are still completing their primary series, every Tuesday or Wednesday at every office, you can get them there as well.
Including kids that are aging in, right? So there are kids that are just aging in and becoming eligible. So a 5-month-old becoming a 6-month-old, or kids that currently boosters are only down to 12. So if your kid's 11 and then turns 12. So we're here. We're here for you. And again, thank you, Andy Benani, for a shout out on the clinics too.
And finally, Todd, there's one more thing we have to talk about because it's coming 4 weeks from today on Friday, October 28th, the second annual Halloween candy tasting episode. Tara was asking about it. Annie wants to know about it too. We've promised that it is going to happen. We're going to try to get some special guests wrangled. I'd love to have Andy Nowak back for that one too, because it was fun to torture him with the bad Halloween candy. But Friday, October 28th, on that episode, we will be doing our official bad Halloween candy tasting. So as always, we have a few suggestions already. If you have suggestions for really bad Halloween candy that will gross us out when we try it, drop them in the comments or send us a message. Todd,
I have an idea.
Uh-oh.
I'm almost willing to throw this down. What if we have one social media live feed at every office and have those candies at that station? Office managers, providers can just pop in and try it and taste it, give their immediate reaction, and go about their business. Just so everybody gets to chip in on this.
You're talking about a Kids Plus Live candy cam. Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what it is. It's a candy cam.
That's genius. We're going to do that. And you know what? What perfect timing, Colleen. I'm terrified, Colleen. I'm going to click this link. I don't even know why I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it. She's got another one for us, she says. We'll just put it up there right on the screen. There you go. Individually eyeballs decorating Halloween. Oh, good God. Individually wrapped. I'm calling it up now. On individually
This
wrapped.
does not sound good. It's what, eyeballs?
Individually wrapped. Oozing candy eyeballs. Jelly eyeball bulk Halloween candies for trick-or-treating. This sounds absolutely awful. We're going to have to do it.
And I'm going to tell you that jelly bean game that they maybe play here in Squirrel Hill, where you chose the color jelly bean and it was either going to taste like vomit or like lime or something. This is our chance to get back. You don't have to have every candy, but I'm throwing down to Kids Plus employees right now. It could be literally a less than 1 minute jaunt to the candy cam. Test it. Give us your reaction. We have to see the reaction on camera, right, Chad?
Yeah, we do.
And you have to name the candy you're trying. So they don't have to try them all, but they would at least have to try one, and then reaction, then they can go off camera.
So we set out the whole buffet. It's like a salad bar.
Oh, yeah.
And they can walk up and they try more than one.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you're willing, if you're brave,
right.
I mean, that can be done boom, boom, boom. But, you know, that might give us like an Ashley Riley in there and a Travis and a Tara and Siobhan and all the people, you know, directors can come in.
That's absolutely beautiful.
And you walk out.
I'm so down with that. And I just want to say, speaking of Ashley Riley, that she's not been on the show for a while. We've been trying to get her on. I just spoke with Dr. Wolf, our scheduling guru, yesterday, trying to get her on. And, wait a minute. Tara just chimed in.
I'm taking back to her.
No, Tara, you're going to do this. You are. And Courtney thinks Brooke down in Pleasant Hill should join in. I'll bet Brooke would join in. We're trying to get Dr. Riley. The problem with Dr. Riley, as you all know, is that she's just too cool and too popular, and she is way too booked up. All of her Fridays in the next month, they're just wildly booked up. However, we do have the equally popular but miraculously unscheduled on the 21st of September, Dr. Kate Belser. She'll be joining us on the 21st. So that is exciting. Stay tuned for her. But yeah, we're getting lots of love for the candy cam, except from Tara. But no, Tara, the CEO, is going to make you do this.
Yeah. I mean, you know, as long as it doesn't violate some HR law. But yeah.
Well, we'll check with HR, but they'll be fine with it. It's fine. Yes, the candy cam, the Kids Plus candy cam is going to be live on October 28th. I absolutely love this idea.
This could be an absolute just crazy, like.
Kelly says those lollipops with the bugs on them. Ew. Yeah, yes, that last word is definitely the proper description. I know I've said this before on this show, but this guy, he's like Steven Spielberg in the 80s. Just an endless font of wild and crazy and cool ideas, and not nearly enough time to develop them. But when ones really jump up to the top, those are the ones that we leap on right away. And this is definitely a top shelf.
I just want to throw down. I'm talking front office. I'm talking back office. I'm talking billers. I'm talking breastfeeding. I am talking our behavioral health team. I want to see you putting your pallets on the line for this Halloween.
And again, that's the beauty of this, because someone like a Dr. Ashley Riley, whose schedule is way too crazy for her to be on now for a full hour this month, she could, between one exam room and the next, swing by the candy cam, try one of those god-awful oozing eyeballs that Colleen wants us to try, have her reaction, and move on to the next patient. This is genius.
Thank you all for tuning in. We're going to jump over to my TikTok channel. That'll be at DRTODDWO. But we are really trying to drive up the Kids Plus TikTok page. So if you get a chance, help us out. We're looking for likes, followers. Followers really important on our Kids Plus TikTok page, which is at Kids KIDS plus PLUS PEDS PEDS.
And if you're just in the mood for more of this, although it's a little wilder and crazier because it's TikTok, anything goes. It's like the wild, wild west. We're going to jump over there on Todd's account for the next hour, and we'll be back next week right here, same time. I was going to say, God, same bat time, same bat station. Now I'm really aging myself, but you get the idea. So he's over there. For the amazing Dr. Todd Willin, I am Chad Herman. You have been watching a rather fired up and meandering and then eventually oozing episode of Kids Plus Live, coming to you from Evidence Based Studios right here at Kids Plus Pediatrics, where we are taking science and apparently terrifying candy back one episode at a time and taking care of children and families online the same way we do right here in these offices. Have a great weekend, everybody.